Behind every legend lies a reason. This is Myth and Motive.
This case demonstrates how victims can sometimes detect subtle behavioral changes in those close to them. Patterns of deception often involve inconsistencies in stories and unexplained absences. Documented cases show that premeditated violence frequently follows a recognizable escalation pattern. The psychological mechanisms behind such discoveries involve recognizing deviations from normal relationship dynamics. This differs from fictional thrillers, where clues are conveniently placed for dramatic effect. In reality, uncovering such plots requires methodical attention to details that might seem insignificant individually. The process often involves piecing together financial records, communication patterns, and behavioral changes. Such cases reveal how betrayal can be systematically planned while maintaining outward normalcy. This category of true crime involves premeditated murder plots that are discovered and stopped by the intended targets themselves. These cases typically emerge from the breakdown of close personal relationships, where financial motives become entangled with deteriorating trust. Unlike most true crime, where investigators solve cases after the fact, here the victims use their own observation and evidence gathering to expose lethal threats. The intended victims in these cases employ logic and careful attention to detail to identify patterns of suspicious behavior. These thwarted plots often involve partners or spouses who have developed elaborate plans over extended periods. The discovery process typically involves noticing inconsistencies in stories, financial irregularities, or unusual behavioral changes. What makes these cases particularly chilling is that the threat comes from someone the victim once trusted completely. The evidence collected by these vigilant individuals often becomes crucial in subsequent legal proceedings. The story unfolds in the modern era, where digital communication and private investigation tools are readily available. The core focus is not on violence, which was ultimately prevented, but on the psychological realization of a profound betrayal. This involves the procedural steps taken to gather evidence and prove what was suspected. The initial phase involves establishing what is already known, forming the key points in the investigation. This groundwork is crucial, as it defines the boundaries of the known facts before deeper inquiry begins. In such cases, patterns often emerge from digital footprints, financial records, or inconsistencies in communication. The process mirrors standard investigative techniques, where establishing a baseline of verified information is the first step. This segment lays the factual foundation, detailing the mechanisms used to transition from suspicion to confirmed knowledge. The erosion of trust often begins with subtle behavioral shifts that accumulate over time. Partners may become unusually secretive with their devices, guarding phones or computers as if they contain classified information. Unexplained absences become more frequent, with vague or inconsistent stories about where they've been or what they were doing. Financial inconsistencies often emerge: unaccounted-for purchases, unusual withdrawals, or contradictory explanations about money. These patterns differ from ordinary marital problems by their specific, measurable nature and the deliberate concealment involved. A single discovery often acts as the catalyst: a strange purchase receipt, an odd online search left open, or a concerning conversation overheard. This moment transforms suspicion from vague unease into concrete evidence that cannot be easily dismissed or explained away. Such discoveries create a psychological tipping point, where trust erosion accelerates dramatically. This transition from unease to investigation represents a common psychological pattern in cases of suspected deception. Unlike simply voicing concerns, which can alert the subject and compromise evidence, covert investigation preserves the element of surprise. Systematic action in such contexts typically involves methodical information gathering rather than impulsive confrontation. This approach allows for collecting verifiable data while minimizing emotional interference that could cloud judgment. Covert investigation requires careful planning to avoid detection, as premature discovery can destroy evidence or escalate conflict. The systematic nature distinguishes professional inquiry from casual suspicion, following logical patterns rather than emotional reactions. This phase often involves documenting inconsistencies and establishing timelines rather than making immediate accusations. The decision marks a shift from internal processing to external verification, a critical boundary in trust violation cases. Financial surveillance often begins with a review of bank statements and credit card records. Unusual withdrawals, especially large or frequent cash transactions, can be a primary indicator of hidden activity. Another common check involves looking for new or altered life insurance policies, which can signal financial motives. Digital monitoring may include checking a shared computer's browser history, search logs, or email access. In more extreme cases, individuals have installed keylogger or spyware software, which raises significant legal and ethical concerns. Such software can track keystrokes, messages, and location data without the target's knowledge. When personal efforts reach their limits, hiring a private investigator becomes a documented next step in some cases. Investigators use legal methods like public records, searches, and surveillance to gather evidence discreetly. The transition from emotional suspicion to systematic investigation is a common pattern in cases of betrayal. This shift represents moving from subjective feelings to objective, verifiable information. The discovery phase involves gathering physical or digital evidence that can be independently verified. Concrete evidence differs from circumstantial evidence in its direct, unambiguous nature. Such evidence might include documented communications, financial transactions, or verifiable witness accounts. The weight of tangible proof often serves as a turning point in understanding the full scope of deception. This evidence-gathering process follows investigative principles used in various professional contexts. The discovery of concrete proof transforms suspicion into documented reality, changing how the situation can be addressed. The evidence she uncovered fell into two distinct categories: direct and circumstantial. Direct evidence could include recorded conversations where the plot was explicitly discussed with a third party. Circumstantial evidence, while indirect, can form a compelling picture when multiple strands align. This pattern included communications with individuals known for violent criminal activity. It also involved research into toxic substances or methods designed to be untraceable. Financial moves, like a synchronized increase in a life insurance policy, provided a clear motive. Individually, these elements might be explainable. Together, they formed a coherent narrative of premeditation. Crucially, she discovered this plan not after an attack, but during its active planning stages. Presenting evidence to law enforcement marks a critical turning point in such cases. This phase is often emotionally and logistically difficult for those reporting. Authorities may initially categorize reports as domestic disputes, which can affect their response. This categorization can sometimes lead to hesitation or a slower investigative process. The challenge involves convincing officials that the evidence points beyond a private conflict. Success often depends on the clarity, volume, and nature of the documentation provided. This step requires persistence, as the initial reaction may not match the reporter's urgency. The process highlights a common procedural gap between personal testimony and official action. A well-organized dossier of evidence is often the turning point in such cases. This compilation typically includes timelines, financial documents, and sometimes audio recordings. Presenting this material in a clear, factual manner forces authorities to recognize the credible threat. It shifts the situation from mere suspicion to a matter requiring an official investigation. Because the plot was interrupted before the murder could occur, the resulting legal charges differ from a completed act. Prosecutors typically pursue charges for conspiracy to commit murder or solicitation of murder. These are serious felonies that focus on the planning and agreement to carry out the crime. The legal outcome hinges on proving intent and agreement, not the final violent act. The perpetrator's arrest was made possible by the evidence she meticulously compiled. During court proceedings, her investigation was validated when the materials she gathered were used to secure a conviction. The conviction specifically addressed the plot against her life, demonstrating how thorough documentation can be crucial in legal cases. However, there are limits to what can be known about such cases. We cannot pinpoint the exact thoughts of the perpetrator or the precise moment when the idea formed. This is common in criminal investigations. While evidence can establish actions and intent, the internal mental processes remain inaccessible. The legal system relies on observable evidence, rather than speculative psychology, when determining guilt. This case demonstrates how methodical evidence collection can overcome the inherent limitations of understanding another person's mind. The full, private history of the relationship's breakdown remains known only to the individuals involved. We do not have access to every piece of evidence presented in court, as some details are often sealed or kept private. This lack of complete information is a common feature in many legal cases involving personal relationships. What people often get wrong is that this story is frequently sensationalized in public retellings. Sensationalization can distort facts, focusing on scandal over the complex, private realities of a relationship's end. This pattern highlights the gap between private truth and public narrative in stories of betrayal and obsession. The investigation relied on methodical detective work, not supernatural intuition. Digital footprints, such as online activity patterns and communication records, provided crucial evidence. The perpetrator's actions were calculated, not cartoonish, revealing a pattern of deliberate behavior. Mistakes in covering tracks, like inconsistent alibis or digital oversights, often expose such schemes. This contrasts with fictional portrayals, where villains are overtly malicious or rely on luck. The resolution unfolded through evidence analysis, avoiding dramatic confrontations. Such cases highlight how real-world investigations depend on factual scrutiny over speculation. The procedural victory was secured through meticulous documentation and navigating the legal system. This outcome demonstrates how systematic evidence collection can overcome threats within established frameworks. The case provides practical insight into threat assessment, showing how patterns of behavior can be documented for legal purposes. It serves as a severe lesson in personal security, highlighting vulnerabilities that documentation can help address. Unlike dramatic confrontations, This resolution occurred through methodical processes rather than direct confrontation. The legal system's role here illustrates how institutional mechanisms can provide protection when properly engaged. This approach to security emphasizes prevention through documentation rather than reaction to immediate danger. The takeaways focus on practical measures that individuals can implement within existing legal frameworks. Intuition often manifests as a persistent unease, a gut feeling that something doesn't align with the presented reality of a relationship. This internal alarm is frequently triggered by observable patterns, such as a partner's excessive need for control over communication or social interactions. Financial manipulation, including unexplained transactions or pressure to commingle assets prematurely, serves as another major behavioral red flag. Secrecy, particularly regarding past relationships, finances, or daily activities, creates an information imbalance that fuels distrust. While instinct provides the initial warning, it must be transitioned into a rational process of verification before any confrontation. This discrete search for evidence might involve documenting inconsistencies or securely reviewing legally accessible information. The goal is to gather objective data points that either confirm the intuitive concern or provide an alternative explanation. Confronting a potential threat without this verified foundation can escalate risk and provide opportunity for further deception. Therefore, the process advocates for a methodical approach. Acknowledge the feeling, then seek the facts. Digital and financial footprints often reveal hidden patterns in relationships. Search histories, financial transactions, and digital communications can form a revealing trail. This digital evidence frequently becomes the critical factor when plans unravel. Awareness of shared digital spaces provides practical insight into relationship dynamics. Basic understanding of family finances serves as an important safety mechanism. These combined digital and financial checks can detect inconsistencies before they escalate. The patterns left in digital records often mirror real-world relationship behaviors. This forensic approach to relationship awareness helps identify potential risks through observable data. The system responds to evidence, not fear. Her success hinged on presenting a clear, organized case to authorities. In situations of potential danger, keeping a private log of incidents is crucial. Preserving screenshots and documents creates a verifiable digital trail. Creating a timeline organizes disparate events into a coherent narrative. This methodical documentation can transform a claim from an allegation into a viable investigation. For law enforcement, structured evidence provides a clear starting point, unlike emotional appeals. This approach shifts the burden from proving fear to presenting documented facts. Betrayal often begins with subtle inconsistencies that challenge our established beliefs about someone. The psychological process involves systematically dismantling the illusion of trust when faced with contradictory evidence. This cognitive dismantling requires confronting uncomfortable facts that don't align with one's previous understanding. The real challenge lies in believing the evidence you uncover, even when it points to conclusions you'd rather avoid. This process demands immense courage as it forces re-evaluation of fundamental relationships and assumptions. The psychological pattern shows how rational analyses can gradually replace emotional attachment when evidence accumulates. This transition from trust to recognition of betrayal represents a profound psychological shift in perception. The courage to accept uncomfortable truths often marks the beginning of psychological recovery from betrayal. This narrative demonstrates how clear thinking can emerge under extreme emotional pressure, rather than panic or irrationality. It serves as a powerful example of self-preservation, manifesting not as flight, but as focused, life-saving investigation. This psychological phenomenon occurs when individuals channel distress into systematic problem-solving rather than emotional reactions. Similar patterns appear in documented cases where victims of manipulation or betrayal used analytical approaches to uncover truth. The mechanism involves redirecting emotional energy toward gathering verifiable information and identifying inconsistencies. This approach contrasts with common fight-or-flight responses, representing a more calculated survival strategy. Documented psychological research supports that some individuals maintain cognitive clarity during crises through this investigative focus. The narrative illustrates how systematic investigation can provide both emotional distance and practical solutions in threatening situations.
If the legend hooked you, subscribe and open the next case.